the thing is you shouldn't have to convince somebody you're a professional. If they can't already tell that, you're already behind.
So the big question is, what are top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate, grow their teams and add more transactions year over year while so many struggle? To get the answers, we interview top real estate agents to learn their secrets to success. Listen, we believe every agent should make a minimum of $100,000 per year, and we're on a mission to make this happen. We've already helped over 100 agents achieve this with our coaching. So if you want to fast track your business growth, get to your first $100,000 in GCI or add another $100,000 in GCI using social strategies, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com, or you can just click the link in the description below. Also, just make sure to follow us, hit that subscribe button, and if you get any value from this at all, please tell a friend and leave us a review. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Elite Agent Secrets show. Today we've got Bradley Arnold with us. He's been selling real estate since 2001. He's closed over 500 deals. He's got a team of 8 and he's got 2 locations that he services. He's going to be dropping some heat for you today with regards growing and scaling your real estate business. His 3 secrets to success. Bradley, thanks for coming on the show with us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Dude, we're excited to have you. You got some kick-ass topics. You got a really, really interesting story that we got to learn a little bit about before we started rolling. But for all those who don't know you yet, and I highlight yet because they will, give us a little bit of the lowdown, give us a little bit of the background, take us back to day one and give us context.
So I'm Bradley Arnold, 43 years old. I've been selling real estate professionally since around 2001, but I grew up in the business. My father I think my father got his real estate license in around 1983. I was around 5 years old at the time. And I remember him sort of going from the traditional working for a construction company. He was an executive in the company, but wanted to be self-employed. And I remember him, going to the school at night and getting the license, getting the license for the real estate. And then sort of just growing up watching him selling real estate. Back in the days, I would follow him to listing appointments, and we used a Polaroid camera at that time. And I would go in and take the pictures and then walk outside and hold it in the sunshine, let it develop. So I've been around the real estate business my entire life. I always sort of knew this is what I wanted to do. Just growing up, watching my father do it, just had a familiarity with the business, saw the income opportunities that were possible, and then also sort of recognized the barriers to entry, not being so high. It's not like law school or medical school where you spend 10 years developing the skill set to be able to operate. With real estate, there's very low barrier to entry. Go to a 2 or 3 week school and get the license and then take off. So I was always excited about coming into the real estate business. Again, just growing up watching my father do it, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
The craziest part is you probably knew how to do a listing appointment before you knew how to fill out that Scantron for the SATs.
I did. I mean, I was filling out paperwork and helping my father pull comps for appraisals and that sort of thing when I was in high school.
He was selling homes before he knew how to do that. He was
right.
Never mind filling out documentations. So here's the thing. You might have set yourself up here a little bit. How good were your first few years? Walk us through. I know you've been selling real estate for over a decade now. So what were your first few years like with regards like transactions, and take us on a bit of a journey of scale for you and how it's kind of worked
in
out.
The first few years, I essentially learned everything not to do. Like I failed miserably. I mean, I was a 21-year-old kid who had not completed college. So, when I chose to come home, I was on the path to graduation, but I didn't know it was time to declare a major, and I didn't know. I mean, I didn't have one. Real estate was not a curriculum at college and university at that time that I was aware of anyway. And so, my first few years, I came back, I was 21, 22 years old. My father had acquired several rental properties over the time, and he sort of threw me the keys and told me, I was the property manager. Well, I didn't know anything about managing property. Um, he obviously he gave me the keys to the properties that were sort of the most challenging as far as tenants paying the rent and that sort of thing. So I sort of learned the hard way. At that time, just with not a lot of training and that sort of thing, I didn't really do that well. So I spent about 3 years selling real estate, and then I took a pause. I went to work in professional baseball. I was a clubhouse manager for a local AA baseball team that was an affiliate of a major league team. And so I sort of stepped away from real estate for a few years. And during that time is when everything sort of took off. We had the 2001 through 2006 was just an explosive time in real estate. Of course, that led up to something that we all will never forget, which was a major real estate crash. And ironically, I started to come back into the business. I'll never forget. I told my dad, I said, I think I'm ready to come back into the real estate business. I had taken about a 6-year absence from 2001 to say 2006 or 7. And I decided I wanted to get my real estate license back. I had gotten married, had a kid, had another kid on the way, was doing very well, with the baseball team. And then also was working at a package store part-time that it turned out later on down the road, I'll come back to that, but ended up being a game changer for me. Built a lot of relationships and that sort of thing. In 2007, I decided I'm going to get the real estate license back. I literally scheduled the test, and I'm watching the news one day in October of 2007. I've got my test scheduled for sometime in November, and they're like talking about this real estate market crash and that we're heading into this recession. So here I am planning on coming back into the real estate business on the brink of the biggest real estate crash, in our lifetime. But ironically, that worked out great for me because I came into the business at a time when everybody else was sort of getting out and the field was being flushed. The thing about real estate, and we go back to this comment I made earlier about low barriers to entry, is that because of that, it invites a lot of people to come in the business at a time when things are going really well. So in 2005 and 6, when anybody could get a mortgage just based on stated income, it was a great time to sell real estate, right? Because all your friends could buy a house. Credit score wasn't that important. There's a lot of things that were going on, that were loose in the lending environment that allowed real estate agents to sort of reap. So it was ironic I picked that time to come back in, but I earned my real estate license back in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, where what I did was I reflected back on the times that I was in it before in 2000, 2001. And I said, why did I not have success then? Well, I identified a couple of different things. Number one is a lack of training. Although I had grown up watching my dad do it, dad does it a certain way. And I think it's a little naive to think that, it's honest. It's perfectly honest and perfectly natural for a little boy to think that his dad, hung the moon and has the tricks and the secrets to everything. But when you took a step back and, a few years later, a little bit more mature about things, you recognize like, hey, one of the reasons I wasn't successful because I lacked training that I needed. So the second time around, when I came back in 2008, there was not a lot of real estate transactions to be had because the market was slowing down. But hey, I've got the license. I'm making a sale here and there, and I'm investing a lot of time and energy into training and really honing my skill set so that in the future I could be successful.
Right. So how was when you came back after your kind of training and revamp, what was your scale like then? Was it like you did 10 deals your first
year I did 12 deals, around 12 deals, just one per month, but at the time, that was not bad. I was clawing and fighting my way into the top 50, and we have a smaller MLS. And so these numbers may sound shocking to someone listening to this in a metropolitan area, but I live in rural West Tennessee, and our association has around 500 members. So, the top 10% in the real estate industry, no matter what market you're in, the top 10% of the producers do 90% of the volume. So that's the level you're trying to get to. You're trying to figure out where that top 10% is and the volume that you need to get there. And that's where sort of my mindset was. I wanted to be in the top 50. That's what I said. And so, over the course of a couple of years, I got myself there. 12 deals the first year, maybe 18 the second year, and then started doing 30 consistently for a couple of years in a row. And then it becomes, if you're one man, one operation, without scaling, you start sort of hitting a point where the only way to really increase at that point is to add human resource, which adds someone to a team, or to get a higher transaction price, which has naturally been occurring over the last 10 years as the real estate market just keeps appreciating. So that's all been taking place. Yeah.
And now you've somehow managed to go from 12 deals in a year to now you've done over 500.
Well, I've done, so essentially, we're getting up to averaging a little bit over 50, 60, 70 deals a year, and even started, tapping towards 100. But, at this point, what I'm trying to do is move into a different role. I've always been producer and agent. And at this point, I've sort of, promoted myself, if you will, to broker owner. And now I've got a different mindset. I mean, I still have to produce to keep my doors open, but the point of having a broker is just to have agents and to build successful careers for other people. And so, because the brokerage really doesn't exist, without that. And so that's sort of where my focus is now, And so I'm scaling down on personal volume on purpose, right? To work on the business more than in the business.
Yeah, 100%. It's the whole time money leverage, right? It's like, hey, you build your own income and it's great, but like you realize I'm putting in the 12-hour days every day or whatever it is. And you get to that. Yeah. And then you go, well, why don't I take, 40 to 20%, whatever your percentage is with your team, and I give them deals. They earn a lot of money, but then ultimately I don't kind of quote unquote have to show up. Even though you do, but it's like not at the same degree, which is ultimately...
It's a different type of showing up, right?
It's a different type of showing
leverage.
Up. It's leverage, This is what we love. So what I want to do is I want to dive now straight headfirst into your first topic, which is the X factor in selling, right?
Okay, but before we open up that can of worms or the can of excitement, how did you manage and how are you managing this while I heard you say you have a wife, you have 2 kids. I'm assuming they're a little bit older now.
3 kids now.
Oh, yeah, 3 kids now. Okay.
Since that time. So yeah, I have a.
So how do you manage it and how do you get the right, whatever the right balance is in your, sphere where you happy wife, happy life. And then there's the kiddos. I'm assuming there's soccer games, volleyball games, basketball games, school stuff and activities, running the brokerage, running the team, being there for them as well. So that's one of the things that I'm struggling with. So selfishly, I want to know.
Well, I don't have it figured out by any means. It sounds good, but I struggle with it all the time. Am I compromising, my family for my career? And that's I'm a family first guy, but I don't know how to explain it. My dad, having grown up in this business, this is all I know. And I never felt like my father was not there. So I don't have this great burden about not always being home, but, I pop in and out. I control my schedule. I don't know what that balance is. I mean, I think it's different for everyone, but, I do struggle with that. I'll just be honest with you guys. I struggle with what I try not to do is miss a ball game for a real estate appointment. My son's got a ball game and I have an opportunity to sell a house. I'm going to be at a ball game 9 times out of 10. Now, at certain times, you sign an agreement with the customer and you owe the customer certain duties. And sometimes that can come into conflict. And if it's a ball practice, versus some contractual obligation that I have, obviously I'm going to honor the contractual obligation. But I think it's different for everyone. But I think I think that it's better to err on the side of your family, okay? Because at the end of the day, when the race is done, you don't get the time back. And you can sell real estate well beyond the time your kid is 18 years old or 20 years old. So maybe I have to think about that. You don't get the years back with your children. You can sell real estate till you die, essentially, or until you can, as long as you can breathe and talk, and especially the way the business is now. I mean, I don't think you ever have to see someone to do a real estate transaction. I mean,
it's definitely a lot of people that don't.
I love that. Thanks for unpacking that.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I don't have it figured out, so that's not something that I would feel good about lending expertise to. I'm trying to figure it out just like anyone else, and I think real estate's obviously different than some other careers, but I mean, nurses, doctors, I mean, everybody, every industry, everyone has these challenges, and so I don't think that I'm in some sort of island, and I just wish you the best in trying to figure it out for yourself too. I mean, it's important. We understand. We all agree on that.
I think the main point is, doesn't matter whether you're producing 100+ deals a year or you're just getting into the business. We all struggle with the same shit, no matter where we are. And sometimes we struggle with different things depending on where we are in our life, right? So we may not have it figured out, but your answer basically shows us that no matter what, you can just do it because you're staying consistent. You have some kind of like a schedule, you're blocking it out. And that's why it leads into your topics, that we're going to be covering today. It's like, hey, I'm very successful. I don't have it figured out. It's okay. I'm also not losing sleep over it because I don't have it figured out. Right. I'm just taking it one day at a time.
Where is the ultimate level of success that you're trying to get to? I mean, I love Tom Brady. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but I love Tom Brady. And I once heard someone ask Tom Brady, like, what's your favorite Super Bowl? And his answer is the next one. So, I mean, it's like, at what point are you the ultimate champion of life or everything? I mean, there's tomorrow. And I mean, you may have won today, but you have to go fight tomorrow and you can get your butt kicked tomorrow, But I'll say this, just highlighting about the time. One thing I want to say that my father told me this when I was young. Son, the more you have on the plate, I've watched you your entire life, the more you have on the plate, the more you're going to get done. Like, so you put the more stuff you pile on my back, the stronger I'm going to be. And if you give me one thing to do and 24 hours to do it, I mean, you'll be lucky if it gets done. If you give me 24 things to do in 1 hour, a lot of them are going to get done. I mean, it's just, I think that, certain people respond that way well and certain people don't, but I'm one of those ones that responds well to adversity and to a challenge. And what I don't respond well to is free time with no intended goal, with no, with no direction, with just, I don't respond and I don't do well in that environment. When it doesn't matter, when it's just like, okay, whatever,
It's that pressure cooker you evolve inside.
Yeah, I think some people respond more to pressure than others, but that's the environment I thrive in.
100%. So let's dive into your first topic, which is the X factor of selling. It's about price, condition, location, timing, and marketing. Unpack that for us. Okay. What do you mean by it?
So I think in the, in the topic headline, I put the X factors, and really I may have selected the 5 factors, but I walk into every single listing appointment with this overarching idea in mind that, it's an honor to be called to interview for a listing, but at the end of the day, there's more factors at stake than just the real estate agent alone. Okay. And this is particularly true in a market and in a climate when someone can hire a professional photographer, put their listing on Zillow and so you're like, well, wait a minute, that's anybody can do that. Right. So I always say there's more to it than just the marketing, or there's just more to it. The factors I like to sort of lay out are that every piece of property, no matter what it is, and we sell a lot outside the single family home, but it comes down to these 5 factors. It's price, condition, location, timing, and marketing. And I always try to start off the conversation by talking about the location first because it's fixed. We don't get to pick the property up and move it to another location. So we're dealing with that factor as it sits. Does the location add to or take away from, from the property? Is it an emerging location, or is it sort of a location that's in distress? What are the properties around it? Is there a road coming through? What are the factors? Like, is it convenience to a school, convenience to a whole number of factors, but we all agree, and most people say that location is like one of the most important factors. But you always deal with the location, and you sort of like check, is this a sort of a plus or a negative? Is the location a plus or negative? And then we just sort of table that, and we have to come back to it, but we just think about it in those terms. I always talk about the timing next. And when I talk about timing, I talk about it sort of from the 30,000 foot view and then from the hyperlocal view. So what I mean by that are, with timing, we don't control that either. So there's economic factors that are at play. What's the job market like? What are the interest rates? Is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? Is there equilibrium where there's a stagnant market? I mean, what are those factors, and sort of how are they going to play into, our transaction and what we're trying to accomplish? And so that's sort of timing, sort of from a macro standpoint. From a micro standpoint, you look at the time of the year, and if depending on what type of property is. Again, we sell more than single family homes. So right now we're selling hunting properties. It's after season. So this is the winter time is the perfect time to sell a recreational farm, but the winter time is not necessarily the best time to sell a single family home, right? Or a lake house. Or a home with a pool. So what about the timing? Zillow a few years ago put out a book, and they suggested sometime around, the first 2 weeks of April is the ideal time to list your home. So, if listing your home in April, that's a different set of expectations than if you listed it on Christmas Eve. Because if you list your house on Christmas Eve or even on Thanksgiving, I always tell people, in housing, between say Thanksgiving, the week of Thanksgiving and the first of the year, it's sort of a slowdown. People don't want to be picked up and moved during that time. Not to say that transactions don't take place, but the day on market might be a little bit different. If days on market are a certain average, it might be a little bit different during that time than it would be, during the middle of the spring. So I talk about the timing and sort of how that, impacts what we're trying to do. Right now, I tell people often, if you're trying to sell a property, there's never been a better time. We're in an ultimate seller's market, right? The rates are low, so there's incentives for buyers. But there's so many more buyers than there are homes for sale. So that timing is good, right? That's what creates that supply shortage is what creates that, price inflation. So that's a good time to sell. I always go next to the condition. So do you want to sell the home as is, or is it fully updated? How old are the systems in the home? Is the central heat and air unit functional? What about the plumbing and electrical? Is it the cast iron pipes, or is it the updated PVC or whatever? But the condition is going to have an effect. But the thing about condition is we can move condition. Like you can paint, you can put some new floors in, or you cannot, but you can change the condition. So if your price is stuck in a certain thing, if you are stuck and we're not getting any movement, then maybe we improve the condition to bring these things in equilibrium. The marketing is what we do. That's what I say the agent comes in. What type of website placement is your property going to be featured on? Professional photography, keyword optimization, the agent's sort of understanding of we sell a lot of niche properties. So putting those on realtor.com is not very savvy marketing. If I've got a recreational hunting farm, just having it on realtor.com is not very effective. So what type of marketing you're going to do, but that's going to impact, the sale. Okay. And then the price is ultimately the last thing I talk about, because I say it has to be congruent with these other factors. So I like to give an analogy sometimes of a slot machine. If you've ever played a slot machine, that, the magic happens when all five factors are in alignment, when there's five cherries. If you've got a cherry, and one thing's out of a line, that's not jackpot. And the sale happens when these five factors are congruent, they're in alignment, and they all agree with one another. And I try to position myself in a way that I understand what these factors are, not necessarily that I'm some great expert that should be that has a doctorate in real estate, but I understand the fundamental factors that affect a sale. And I try to position our property or come up with a strategy or a plan that is in harmony with the understanding of these factors. And that's, to me, how we've had a lot of success. Has nothing to do with Bradley. If anything if it's not repeatable, it's not good. It's no good. If I can't take these fundamentals and teach them to someone else, then it dies when I die, and then therefore I don't have much of a business. But if I can teach the fundamentals and sort of have this as a conversation, in any listing interview, I feel like we're going to win. We're going to win on the marketing, and I'll get to that later. But those are my 5 factors: it's price, condition, location, timing, and marketing. And I believe that that's paramount to the success of the sale.
So would you have these conversations with the sellers when you're at their table, just explaining it to them of what that looks like? Is that what you do at your listing appointment?
That is how every listing appointment takes place. People call me, they say, man, you've got these great reviews. I have 200 and some odd reviews, and I'm proud of that. But if you really know me, if you really know Bradley, at the end of the day, you think I'm a liar. I am humble. It's hard to tell that. I'm so confident. I have so much confidence. It's probably gleaming. But at the end of the day, I try to be humble. And I really don't think that there's anything special about me. Real estate, whether it's me, whether it's any other agent, these are the factors, period. I feel like I give you this competitive advantage in the marketing side of it. But see, I'm telling you, in this climate we've been in the last few years, you've had so many for sale by owners. I mean, most people still choose a realtor, but it's really become easy to get a professional photographer, put your home on a third-party website, and the marketing is not your value proposition any longer. What is your value proposition? I go back to negotiating and understanding its mastery of the contract, mastery of the purchase agreement, mastery of negotiations, mastery of the contract.
One of my questions about your X factors, something you said that I think is incredibly important, was like, there's not a framework, there's not a repeatable process. Like, what am I doing? Basically, like, this has to be handed down. So have you built SOPs, you built procedures, so when you are bringing on agents into your team or into your brokerage, it's like, this is how you do it.
This is how we do it.
So then they
Correct.
find success.
This is the understanding that I want you to possess. And this is the conversation I'd like for you to have with the seller. Because I believe ultimately the more you can sort of take it off you and put it on the actual real factors at play here, the better we're going to be. I mean, I don't have to look. The thing is you shouldn't have to convince somebody you're a professional. If they can't already tell that, you're already behind. I mean, like, if you're sitting in someone's living room trying to convince them that you're smart and know how to sell real estate, like, what are we doing here? Like that I assume that they thought that when they got you to come over here. So now we got to talk about like the property. It's not, oh, look how successful Bradley is. I mean, no, there's way more people, people, whatever, this is about the property. Understand the factors, position your property in a way that we can get top dollar and have have success.
I like the idea of, like, if you have got to convince them that you're a professional, basically you're already fucked.
Well, I make it hard for them to fire me because I go over the marketing plan in the beginning, okay? And we realize, like, I've already told you that I'm not special. Here's this marketing plan that I have, though, and I think it is pretty special, right? I mean, I've designed it so that understanding these factors, what I don't want you to do is come back and say, well, you're not marketing my property. You're not going to be confused about how your property is going to be marketed. I'm going to explain that to you in the beginning. And then you're just checking the boxes saying, yes, he said he would do this. He did that. He said he would do that. He did that. And we all agreed before we signed the listing agreement that this was the marketing that was, that was good. Now, look, we're not going to say, I'm a person of accountability. If something don't work, we got to revisit this. But what is it? Why is this property? Look, here's the deal. After so many days on market, every property, every market has an average days on market, and that varies, from time to time or whatever. But what is that average DOM? What is the saturation rate in that market? Okay, because it's a data-driven business. When you understand that, in normal conditions, if you have a property and it is beyond that time, there's something wrong. And I don't know exactly what it is, but it's either the price, the condition, the timing, the marketing, or the location. But newsflash, you ain't picking the property up and moving it. So let's get beyond the location. If the location is that bad, then you better start slashing the price or doing some other kind of, figuring something else out. Like, the worst thing that you have is when your property's in the distressed location. I mean, that almost the only way to sort of overcome that is price, right? But I always look at it and, I almost look at this as like a fail proof. Like you're looking at these things at the beginning, but you're also saying after 30 days, after 60 days, after 90 days, these are what we're like. When you ask me why isn't the property selling, instead of me saying, and coming up with whatever excuse I want to, I mean, I'm zooming in on one of these 5 things that we've already talked about because we recognize it has to be one of these things. This helps establish proper expectations on the beginning, and it helps to make a smooth and easy relationship throughout because they're not wondering what it is that you're doing or, we've already talked about this in the beginning. To me, it's the most important part of the transaction is establishing the proper expectations in the beginning before anybody signs a paper.
Oh, and by the way, would you consider yourself a maverick? Are you an agent, team leader, broker owner who's constantly striving, pushing boundaries and smashing goals? Well, we've already helped over 100 agents cross $100,000 and up in GCI per year. So if you're interested in learning more about our courses and coaching to help you scale your business, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com.